Hi again, I'm here with an update on everything, and I just had my first therapy session in a while. It just happened about 5 hours ago, I think. So, it's very fresh on the mind, and I kind of wanted to come on here and talk about, the time that I had and, kind of what we talked about, how I'm feeling, how I'm feeling in general, and then just kind of give some updates on that. So yeah, I had our session today, and, it starts with like the prototypical, therapist stuff, which if you haven't been to therapy, it's just making sure all the legal stuff is correct. Make sure forms are filled out, and obviously, if you're having, they said, you have confidentiality. Only way that would get break is if you're having, thoughts about harming yourself. You know. But after we got through that whole thing, then we started actually having our real conversation. And since it's our first time meeting, it's just kind of learning about me and what brought me to therapy, and um, obviously it's a stranger, so at first it can be kind of intimidating to talk about your problems, especially if you have a history of not being the most talkative person with that stuff, like I am. But I was open. I told her bluntly that, you know, it, I've struggled with, being just down, and I'm not going to clinically describe myself as depressed, but just being, low energy and just disappointed or sad, and I've had that feeling a lot, as well as anxiety. I've dealt with anxiety. I've dealt with what might be classified as depression, not that I've been clinically described as that, or at least not yet. But I've dealt with that stuff before, and it's only been amplified as of late. But we talked about just the situation, and what might be causing that, and what's been going on in my life. And she was receptive. She listened well. She gave me some. She talked about. She gave some little insights about my. She gave some insights about my situation. She was very nice, very helpful, and made it very easy to talk to her at first. We talked about everything. You know, we didn't have the deepest conversations about like every other, every little issue that I've had, but that's just how it goes in the first session. You're not going to. But the next thing we really focused on was just finding out symptoms about why we're there. Like, so these symptoms can range from a lot of different things. It's just not just obviously there's do you feel excess sadness or anxiety or anxiousness or anger or all those type of feelings. You go through all of your emotional issues or your emotional symptoms, your physical symptoms. Are you having trouble eating? Are you having trouble, you know, staying awake or feeling tired? There's cognitive issues. There's a lot of different things that you go through. And what I've noticed is that when you talk about all these things, it helps kind of when you talk about your own symptoms and your understanding. It helps you understand when you're talking about your own symptoms, what exactly might be an issue with you. Because maybe you think you have something, but then you talk about everything. It's like, am I irritable? Am I emotional? Am I angered? It just gives you a just talking through all that type of stuff and talking through your symptoms and what it could be. It helps you kind of clarify because there were some symptoms that we talked about that I didn't know if I would fall under. Like one specific situation we had where we talked about something called racing thoughts. We compared racing thoughts to just kind of overthinking. And racing thoughts is kind of just more like almost like an overload of information in your head at all times, which is a little different than overthinking. Is when you overthink, you overanalyze, you think of like hypotheticals, you think about like in hindsight a lot of situations, like if I'd have done this, would my outcome been different? And I have thought about that stuff a lot. My overthinking has been an issue, and maybe it's not so much as the racing mind like I would have honestly guessed, but instead it helped me realize that I also been overthinking a lot, and it's causing me stress because I'm trying to think of every solution, every issue that I could have saved or fixed in my life, and it's not a good way to go about it. And that's my own, that's my own fault. But that's something that I'm very clearly realizing now, and that's just something that I'm going to have to work on. So, you know, she was very helpful with kind of coming to terms with what some of my symptoms might be, and I'm sure there's other ones that I didn't uh, say that I had or did have, but I'm sure will be important. And I'm sure there'll be more things that I learn about myself during this time. In terms of what's next for the therapy, honestly, I really covered most of it. We also talked about my previous things, my previous therapy, which I covered last time when I was talking about my plane situation. But we went over that, and that was fine. And then, and after that, we kind of we have our schedule set up for the next couple, sessions and stuff like that. She recommends that, she recommended like weekly sessions, but just to be more financially stable, I decided to go with every 2 weeks instead. We'll do every 2 weeks until we feel comfortable enough, and then eventually it's 1 month, once a month, and then maybe every other month. As she said, therapy. The point of therapy is graduation. Your goal is to go, fix, not necessarily just fix your life, but like go figure out, identify your issues, work through them, and then hopefully you can get into a better point where you can leave and move on with your life. So I thought that was a good point that she brought up, that like therapy is meant for graduating. If you want to do check-ins every once in a while, that's obviously okay, but the goal of it is to not have to keep coming back eventually, which I thought was a great point by her. So I wanted to mention that. Another thing we talked about was that she was going to be sending over this thing called this like wheel. It's a wellness wheel. So she said she was going to send over this thing called a wellness wheel. And what that does is it shows the different types of wellness that person has. So there's spiritual, there's religious, there's mental, there's physical, there's your career life. So there's different things that like they're all spokes on a wheel, and they all keep your body and your life turning, and you have to figure out where yours is at. Not everyone is going to have the same one where you feel more important to put in this X amount of time into religion or spirituality or work or like something like reading. There's so many different things that you have to try to find your balance and try to take parts from each part of the wheel. And I thought that was a really interesting thing, and I haven't gotten the email yet, but once I do, I'll definitely make sure I take the I'll fill out the wellness wheel. I'll definitely make sure I do that. I'm sure I'll update everyone on how that goes, and I'll kind of I can kind of talk about how I went through it, and then maybe someone else can maybe I'll like attach like a link or something, and someone else can, or other people can kind of go through it on their own. And maybe it'll help them get perspective too. Outside of that, another thing we talked about was our goals for therapy, because it's easy. It's not. Honestly, just getting there and talking is like the easiest part. It's not that hard to just kind of walk into somewhere or virtually, like in my case, and just talk, plainly. But instead, what we did was we set goals. What are we looking to get out of this therapy? I understand that like she understands that I am like mentally upset or not well, but what is the ultimate goals? And you don't want to set too many goals because you don't want to overwhelm yourself, and you want to make sure you're being realistic. But you want to set goals, and I set goals, and what I made sure to do was I wanted to set goals, for myself in life, because it's pretty blunt. It's what goals do you just want in your life? And I could have made it about not just me in terms of my goals. I could have made it a more overarching thing with other people. But I decided that in order to grow as a person mentally, physically, I had to make sure my goals were for me and about myself. So my goals are like an example. One of my main goals is just day-to-day happiness, day-to-day life. I want to be more positive when I wake up. I want to make sure I'm enjoying the little things, finding joy in everything like I have before. And that's what my main goal is. That's day-to-day improvement, day-to-day life. Being less anxious, just enjoying the moments. And then another big goal is career-wise. It's just building a better career. It's just building a better future. I want to be better for myself. I want to be an improved version of myself. And, and I'm sure in a few months' time I will be, and I'm excited to be that, and I'm glad that I'm gonna have her there helping me kind of talk through everything and make sure I'm just, keep my head on my shoulders correctly. So that was a big plus. Another thing, and then obviously I had another goal, and that was just that's a bit more specific that I won't really go into for now. But that was pretty much how the first session went. I felt my takeaways from the session is that it went well. Obviously it's only just it was only just one conversation. It's not gonna, I'm not expecting that to fix my problems or anything like that. And it was never going to. Obviously, it's gonna take some time to kind of go through some stuff, and I'm well aware of that. So I'm not expecting to feel better tomorrow. I'm not expecting to feel better 2 weeks, a month, or any time. I'm just gonna go through this process, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, other takeaways. It's worth talking to someone. I've as someone who's new to therapy outside of the small sessions that I had in the past, it's worth trying. I promise it's not as scary as you might think. You might think that what could a stranger know about me? What could a stranger tell me? These people, these therapists, they're truly professionally trained. Like, they can help. You don't need to be worried or scared. It's worth the attempt. If you feel like you need it, I would seriously recommend seeking someone to talk to. It's also good to get another perspective outside of your friends and your family. It's good to get that professional perspective. So I would truly recommend it, and I'm gonna keep you guys updated on everything that happens in the future. I'll have therapy and again in a few weeks. I'll update you guys about the wellness wheel. I keep mispronouncing that. So I have therapy in a few weeks. I have the wellness wheel that I'm gonna fill out. I'll give you guys updates on both of that, and hopefully you guys can stick with me for it as well. If you enjoyed listening, I'll continue to be here. Please feel free to like and follow if you haven't. I'm gonna keep doing this journey, and we'll keep going. And I appreciate people, being helpful and being beneficial. So I'll talk to you guys another time. Thank you for listening. Bye.